The Rebel Capitalist Show.
What do you see for the rest of 2022 and 2023 as far as the economy? And then I really want to take a deep dive into the food shortages, because I know that's something that you have a lot of expertise in. And I think that's something that's on everyone's mind, rightfully so.
Sure. And of course, food is our primary energy, but the primary energy of the economy is oil. And so
Right.
I've spent a lot of time trying to talk to people about the oil situation. So, George, I was actually writing about this in 2017. I had an article out. I just dragged it out for my readers the other day and said, hey, look, here's where I said we were going to have these troubles right around now. And it's not that I'm Nostradamus. It's that I saw this massive fall off in upstream oil and gas investment. It's a very capital intensive business.
Right.
It's constantly has a depleting reservoir of things that it can draw out. So it has to invest in new production. So irrespective of any other arguments about energy, whether we should be in alt energy, what people think of peak oil, all you have to understand is that when you see an industry underinvesting by 50% and it has a 5-year lag time, you can pretty much add up about 5 years out. You say, here's where we're going to have structural shortfalls in this commodity. Now, here's what I'm trying to educate people about, which I know you do a great job at, is oil isn't just another commodity. Like, hey, we're short on cotton, we'll use more nylon. You know, it's not like that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, it's the master resource. And it's not just in, you know, your gas tanks. That's where people think of it. It's not just in the planes. We can understand kerosene and jet fuel. It's 30% is in polyesters and resins and plastics.
Glasses, the frames of my glasses, absolutely everything.
It's absolutely everything, right? And so when you have a shortfall in that, the first thing you have to understand is, again, if we had that field marshal, maybe we could triage in a way that would be reasonable. What I'm trying to get people ready for is, because of the failings we've seen, no field marshals are on the scene, and we're not going to triage in ways that would make sense, right? We're going to triage by price, by availability. Who knows what's going to happen? But we have to be ready for the idea that less oil simply means less economy. And I think that's going to bite Europe hardest first. And it could be really bad, because it's not just like Europe's tottering at the edge of, you know, some little precipice. They've got the, you know, as bad as I hate that they have the Fed, the ECB, woo, they really went on a print to press thon, right? So they've got this, you know, massive overhang of financial excess and an energy shortfall. And I think that's a particularly volatile mix. And I think people need to be ready for that, because that, I think, is going to be particularly explosive through not just 2022, but I don't see this resolving even through most of 2023 at this stage.
Is there a difference between, because you said when energy declines, so does economic output, and that is absolutely 100% true. But what if we can still get the energy temporarily we need for the economy, or to even grow the economy, but it's at a much higher price? So I guess a better question would be, if the price of oil doubles, triples, is it even possible to grow the global economy, because that input that is so necessary is maybe potentially out of reach, although it may be available due to the price?
Yeah. Well, you know, price and supply and demand all sort of make an equilibrium with each other. And so the supply side of this is pinched for a significant period of time. And if we just ignore price for a moment, my view is still that when you look at one of the best charts I have, just shows gross domestic product output of any given country on one axis and the amount of oil they consume on another axis. And it's a little scattering of dotted line, you know, dots that has like a really nice line, like super high correlation, like 0.95 or something, right? So that's just the nature of the beast. And of course we get that intuitively, right? You know, every time you're out on a packed highway, those are all units of economic activity all around you, doing whatever they're doing, right? So with that super high price, you're going to see fewer of those vehicles on the road. You'll see fewer things shipped. You'll see that because that's how price solves for a supply and demand mismatch, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
It's just a supply issue. That's the thing I've been trying to hammer home for people is, this is a supply issue. Tell me how wonkish you want to get. I can show you all the fields and where they're at. And of course the shale boys and girls, I'm so glad they got religion now, and that they're about saying, hey, we only have so much acreage. It's going to maximize shareholder profitability if we drill this at a responsible rate. And that's what they're doing now. And I think that's appropriate, right? I think that fiduciary responsibility ought to be part of this game again. And I'm astonished when you talk about really bad, like ignorant decisions, watching certain senators and Congress people come out and say, we should really put a windfall tax on those oil people because they're making money now. I'm like, well, did you see that they were losing money in 2015, 16, 17, negative ROE?
Right.
Was anybody calling for truing up the coffers of the oil company? No. I mean, it's the nature of the business. You have lean years and you have fat years. And if you say we're going to skim the fat years, you're just going to get lean years. That's how it works.
Do you think they believe that, Chris, or are they just trying to buy votes?
Yes to both.
Yeah.
Why not both? No, it's an election year. Anything goes, right? I mean, they're desperate at this stage. Anything. You watch them pile on around the school shootings. We've got this mysterious trans sets of issues going on, and you got the oil stuff. Whatever they can do, they know that consumers are feeling the pain. But I think consumers have started to figure out that the cause of that pain, increasingly people, George, in my sphere are saying they get it. This was a set of bad decisions by those same people in power who now want to try and fix it with more insane decisions on their part. So,
yeah. And let me break that down just for the viewers and listeners, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think what you're saying is to fix a problem of consumer price inflation or to fix a problem of high prices, you don't solve that with more currency units. You solve that with more supply. You solve that with more stuff. You solve that with more goods and services. Or in this case, you solve it with more oil. You don't solve it by giving people money to buy the oil that exists. That's the way to make the problem worse. So yes. That's what we're dealing with here. So when you see Elizabeth Warren, as an example, come out and say, oh, well, to solve this problem, since the oil companies are making so much money, we'll just go ahead and tax them. And then we'll take that tax and give it to the people to buy the expensive oil. You're creating more currency units in the balance sheets of those individuals that are going to travel velocity, and you're reducing future supply of oil because they're not going to have those profits to invest in more supply downstream or in the future. So so there really are, Elizabeth Warren, arguing for the opposite of what we would actually do if we wanted a real solution.
Yeah, exactly right. You got to. So this is how insane it is to me, because it's the oldest, most axiomatic thing in all of economics is that you want to see demand destruction. The cure for high prices is high prices because demand gets reduced, but then producers are incentivized. Elizabeth Warren et al. Are going the other direction. They're going to try this new economic theory out, which is demand construction. Let's take money from here, give it to people so they can buy more and reduce output and hope prices go down. It's just
right there. Well said. You said it a lot better than I did. Yeah.
No, it's that silly. But we're all going to pay for it. So it's actually that serious too, unfortunately.
Yeah. And then that brings down global economic growth in a time where we really need more of it. And, you look at those charts of population, the growth increase. And, another thing that people don't really understand, they get caught up in this conversation about renewable energy and how we need to replace fossil fuels. And I get it. I totally understand the argument. But what people don't realize is we don't need to, we can't just replace fossil fuels. We need the amount of energy we have access to growing. We need to be able to utilize more and more and more energy as the population grows. If we don't, then the standard of living per capita is going to go down. So we don't just need to replace the existing energy. We need to somehow produce more and more and more of it, or use what we have far more efficiently.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. And so the whole alternative energy argument I find is really a lot of weak thinking and hopium. I'm not averse to it, right? I've got an e-bike. I love my electric bike and put solar on. I'm totally a fan. But the idea that we're going to just put a few windmills up and some solar panels and somehow this all resolves itself without some serious investment and without some serious possible pain and adjustment process is magical thinking. And that's the part I don't like. And very serious people come up with this magical thinking. The Rocky Mountain Institute, they put out these 50-page things. They're like, look, producers produce all these cars and now we're all not using oil. And I'm like, dudes, have you called the lithium producers up? Just call them up. Just talk to them real quick. Right. So it's very much not connected to what I would call reality, which is time, scale, cost. We can do all this, but it's going to be really expensive. It's going to take a long time, and we may or may not have the resources available. So we're going to have to adjust, a little bit. And people aren't, I don't think, really ready for that. But even with that, again, we're missing it when we think that this is all about moving us. It's all about electric cars. It's not. It's about the nitrate fertilizers, the phosphate fertilizers. It's about all the plastics, the resins, the input pieces. There's a lot of critical things contained in the oil story that most people are unaware of. And then it gets even more complicated when you understand there's different grades of oil and types, and they have different uses, and they have different refineries, and they give you different outputs. And it's very complex, and it's developed over the last 150 years. And all of a sudden, Europe said, we don't want any of that Russian oil. It's like, where are you going to find 4 million barrels per day of Urals grade oil? Just somewhere on the market? It's just somewhere. I think there's going to be some learnings on that one. It's going to be kind of painful, but this is where we learn how important energy is. And if we were being serious, George, we would use the remaining oils that we've got, and we will anyway, but we should use them to figure out how we're going to transition to whatever this next thing is. If it was on me, magic wand, we're pouring as much into figuring out thorium electric reactors as a fuel cycle as we do bailing out AIG or bailing out mortgage-backed security companies, right? We should really be pouring huge amounts in, and I think we will, but not until potentially it's a little bit late in the game.
Is nuclear part of the solution?
Yes, no question.
Okay.
Not the old Westinghouse Mark V, boiling reactors, the kind that melted down in Fukushima and they're building in Georgia. That stuff, those are crazy, super expensive, old technology. There's new second, third, fourth gen nuclear technology, some of which I'd have in my backyard. I'd sign right up. A little, Connex style trailer with a pebble bed reactor in it that will make, reliable energy for 40 years. I'd be like, yeah, I'll put it right here. So I think that's a good approach. And then thorium I mentioned is a entirely different fuel cycle. And we had the first reactors for that in the United States, built in Oak Ridge in the late 50s. So people are like, how would we do that? I don't know. Like, we already did it once, and I think material science is better. So we would figure it out again, but China's doing that. India's doing that. And if we were doing that, I'd feel a lot more positive about this, but we're putting money into windmills and solar, which again, there's only so much of that you can do without a storage technology because, well, nighttime and calm days, right? It's just the reality of it that is mysterious that we're not taking it more seriously at this point.